I just wonder, what does success look like? What does a free Iran look like? And is that different than what, I don't know, the average American might imagine freedom in Iran to be?
I think that freedom is something that's universal, and it doesn't matter where you're from or what your origins. Every human being deserves to be able to live in, democracy and in freedom, and to be given their God-given rights, really. So I don't think it differs very much, but I think that the free Iran that we strive for, and that we have, dedicated decades of our lives to, is pretty much outlined in the 10-point plan presented by Mrs. Bari. Rajali is the president-elect of the National Council of Resistance of Iran for the interim government following the overthrow of the regime. She has outlined a 10-point plan, which is actually, I guess, kind of like the cliff notes of the plan for the interim government, which has been, set forth by the National Council of Resistance of Iran. It calls for, people's sovereignty, that the ballot box is the final criterion. It calls for separation of religion and state. It calls for gender equality. It calls for, the rights of Iran's ethnicity to be respected. It calls for the abolition of the death penalty and all forms of torture, and also suppresses suppressive forces and entities that currently exist. It calls for a independent judiciary and the abolition of the Sharia law in Iran. It calls for a non-nuclear Iran and a Iran that is in peace and in stability, source of stability in the region, but also in peace with its neighbors and in the wider sense of it. So it calls for free market society. Um, it's 10 points, but it really gives you a clear outlook of what a free Iran could look like. And it actually puts in place a lot of guarantees that if one of them is missing, you're not going to be able to see that path towards a true democracy. So I think that in essence, it's many lawmakers have called it Jeffersonian because it has that kind of a nature to it, but it is something that many Iranians agree to, and it is a source of unity and a unifying source, um, and sets the path forward to be able to move forward to a secular democratic republic in Iran. And because the Iranian people have suffered from, dictatorships for, I mean, just look at the last century. And it's always unfortunately been imposed on the people of Iran. It's been installed by, foreign players. We had Reza Khan, who was brought in through a military coup. And then when he wasn't serving those purposes anymore for the British, they took him out and he was placed in exile. His son came and took the place. Um, for I mean, at the beginning, his son didn't have that much power, so he was still, I guess, navigating the waters. And in that period, we were able to have just a democratic government for 2 years. And that was the time that Dr. Mossadegh was the prime minister, and he was able to nationalize Iran's oil. But unfortunately, that wasn't suitable for Western interests, and so they had the against Dr. Mossadegh, and he was taken out by the coup d'etat by the CIA and MI6. And the Shah ruled with the iron fist from that moment on. I mean, the brutalities of the Savak are still unprecedented at a lot of different levels, the eternal guards and whatnot. And the people of Iran really wanted to see change, so they revolted against the Shah, and they were able to overthrow the Shah. But unfortunately, their revolution was hijacked. Why? Because it was the Cold War era. Those who had actually created this revolution, those, progressive movements, their leaders were all in prison, and most of them had been executed, but the remainder were mostly in prison. And